Welcome to A Light in the Darkness podcast. I am Ronnie Mason, and thank you for joining my show. In today's show, we're going to be talking about persecution, and that's going to be persecution of Christians, Jews, and possibly any relation it may or may not have, even in politics. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I have two guests. I'm grateful to have on my show. My first guest I'm going to introduce is Doug Buchanan. How you doing, Doug?
Great. Thanks. I'm glad to be here, Ron.
It's my honor, actually. Me and Doug met at Bible study at the church, our church, Calvary Chapel in Modesto. It's actually not his home church, but I'm so glad he comes. What a good friend he's become to me. He's an author. He has two books I'd like to show you real quick. One here is called A Guide Through the Apocalypse. If you can see that, can't see me. You can see the book. You can't see me. All right. Anyway, very good read. And one I haven't read yet, but I can't wait to get my hands on it, which actually I do. It's called Fingerprints of God. And if I'll just ask real quick, Doug, if you can just give us a quick synopsis of what the books are about and why you wrote them, if you don't mind.
Sure. No, I don't ever mind talking about it. They both basically have the same theme, and it's how God has used the number 7, beginning in Genesis and throughout the Bible, and very much in Revelation, and so both Guide Through the Apocalypse just depicts events in a different format than the Fingerprint of God. And the Fingerprint of God focuses just more on the amazing pattern that God establishes in Creation Week that we see over and over and over again throughout the scriptures. So one focuses more on Revelation events, and the other kind of takes you through the whole Bible and how I see God's pattern that he established in Creation Week throughout Scripture.
Yeah, me and my next guest, Tony. Tony, he has his own podcast. See, first, I want to say that me and Tony here met in Utah at Phenomicon, and he has his own podcast, and it's called High Strangeness, and he likes to say everything strange in our reality, right? Right. Well, you're such, huh?
And unexpected.
And unexpected. That's right. I knew I was forgetting something. So he has a really good show. I highly recommend people go and check him out. High Strangers with Tony Hernandez. I've been a guest on his show, I don't know, 12, 13 times. Yeah. And even had the honor of being a co-host. And we honored Doug. We interviewed Doug.
Yeah.
I was honored
Great show.
to interview Doug, actually. And we talked about the Guide Through the Apocalypse a lot. So thank you for coming on the show, Tony. If you could tell them about you a little bit, about your show, about yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm a guy who lives here in Utah, and I started a podcast a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, about strange things, all things strange and unexpected in our reality. And it really started for me because I had gone through a few years of being pretty sick on cancer, and I was being treated. I was very weak, couldn't do much. I was just watching a lot of TV. I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I am interested in a lot of these things that I haven't thought about for a long time. So I started talking to people and interviewing people and doing a podcast. And so I do everything from UFOs to forest fires to sick people to injuries, health conditions, anything strange or unexpected. And I love it. But other than that, I'm just a middle-aged guy, growing up kids, bunch of grandkids, and I'm trying to be happy. It's all good.
Well, I bet it was strange and unexpected to meet me.
It was great. Yeah, it was great when we met, and we kicked it off right from day one, and have been friends ever since. So,
yeah, I could have sat anywhere in that auditorium, at that convention, right? And I sit next to you. And I just so happened to have experiences. Yeah, my first wife was, she played with Ouija boards. She called herself a Wicca, um, tarot cards, you name it. And we had terrible experiences because of her, you know, dabbling in those things. And so that's what got us talking. And then then just when you told me you had the podcast and asked if I wouldn't mind sharing my experiences, I think that was a great thing, and actually led to me doing this. So thank you. Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing it. And I'm glad I got a chance to meet Doug when I did and to see him again. It's great. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm hoping this won't be the last time we have something to talk about. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, let's get going here. We're going to be talking about persecution, and I figured I would go ahead and look and get a definition of persecution, so uh, we can kind of just nail it down, because that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So, what is persecution? So, this is the definition that I found: the act of unfairly targeting, harassing, or oppressing an individual or group based on identity, beliefs, or characteristics such as race, religion, ethnicity, gender, or political views. In other words, like systematic mistreatment, discrimination, or violence. Examples include religious persecution, where individuals are punished for their faith, or political persecution, where individuals are oppressed for their political opinions. And the term implies intentional and unjust hostility, often prolonged or institutionalized. So is that a pretty clear definition to you guys? You think
Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. In fact, we're seeing it all over. If people pay attention, they're seeing it all over.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll start off with Christians. And I found a little data. And I'm looking to the left because that's where my iPad is here, so I can have some notes without crumpling paper. So in 2024 alone, there were 415 documented hostile acts towards 383 churches across 43 states and Washington, D.C. That was an 800% increase from 2018 levels, with an average of about 35 incidents a month. That's like over more than one a day.
It's crazy.
So, and Catholic churches were the ones that seemed to be targeted the most. There was like over 500 attacks since May of 2020, with 85 in 24 alone and 29 this year as of June. And that was of June. So we've seen more things happening since then. So those are just a few numbers I popped up. It looks like the most common reason was ideological or political opposition related to LGBT issues, accounting for 33 out of the 35.
Ron,
Well,
I was going to ask, I wonder what categorizes as, damage or vandalism and that sort of thing. Because I've seen a lot that probably don't go reported, and that's probably true everywhere too. So I'm curious, what's that level where they say, okay, we record this? Because it's probably more than what we think it is. So.
Oh yeah, Doug, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking that I have heard very little. The only time we actually hear of an attack is when it's like a mass shooting. I think a lot of attacks probably just go unreported by the major networks, And so I was surprised actually at your numbers, because I haven't heard about them every week or every month even, that there's attacks. I know even of the murder of Christians in Africa goes largely unreported, It's kind of phenomenal that, you can have such brutality and the mainstream media just seems to kind of ignore it. And to me, any, thing that I think coverage of. On the other hand, I was raised Catholic, so, I kind of understand the hostility. I'm kidding. I'm,
Yeah. Me too. No.
I don't understand. Yeah. But,
And you're right.
yeah,
I think a lot of it does go unreported. I think this is just what's been reported. These numbers, they can only compile these numbers based on reportings. So, and it looks like most of it is like vandalism and attempted arsons.
Sure.
There is some, assaults. And lately, we've seen people getting killed. The first one I can remember off the top of my head was it Sandy Hook?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? How long ago was that? 5, 6, 7? Was it longer than that?
I think
much
it's a little
longer.
than that.
Much longer than that? 10
Yeah.
years? 15 maybe?
Maybe
Around 15.
something in
Yeah.
that ballpark. Yeah.
And it's shocking when you hear of children being killed.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first times I remember. And I know it's not the first thing that's ever, globally. But like you said, overseas, it's worse than we can imagine here. You going to say something, Tony?
Yeah, I was going to just say, before we get into the physical injuries and stuff like that, before we walk away from some of just the building damage and the vandalism and the just, graffiti, it's interesting to me that those are the first steps that you see before they increase. And I've found this to be the case, at least here in Utah, that the closer you get to our major cities, the more you see it. The further you
Yeah.
get away, the less
Yeah.
you see it, which
Oh,
tells
yeah.
you something in my mind. Cities have problems because morals and just the looseness of what's accepted, I think lends to people thinking they can say and do anything. And when you run across a church or a religious group that is trying to stand up for something, they don't like it because not only do they not believe it, but they feel they need to push out anybody who stands up for something. And that's something that we're seeing more and more of across this country. And it's a scary thing in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. I think that, and I think Christians tend to not push back, so I think there can be like, you can't make fun of Muslims. You can't. I mean, remember the I Am Charlie movement in France when that they printed that cartoon of Muhammad and they killed that reporter. They broke into the news station, killed the reporter, and that's where that slogan "I Am Charlie" came from. And that was, I think, 15 years ago or more,
Yeah.
too. And that came to my mind when Charlie Kirk was, assassinated. Was, I am Charlie, and it was for the same reason, essentially, speaking. Well, it was. Well, I shouldn't say it was the same reason. I mean, it was free speech, though, that I think that was under attack. The newspaper in the mind of a Muslim had no right to make fun of their prophet. Right. And they killed him for it. And then I think this guy killed Charlie Kirk for what he thought was harassment of the LGBT community or something, I'm just saying it seems that that's commonality or a parallel seems to be. But yeah, you make one comment against a Muslim and they kill you, but Christians rarely push back when they're persecuted or even killed. So it's not the same game, right?
Well, yeah, and Jesus made it pretty clear with through his example that we're not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He went as a sheep, before his shearers. Yeah.
Right.
And as a sheep goes silent, as he's about to be slaughtered, they don't fight back. But Jesus did also say there will come a time where you will need a sword, to protect your family, possibly. But we're not by nature supposed to go and revile give reviling for reviling, violence for violence, evil for evil. We're not called to that. We're not called to violence. We're called to be salt and light. And if we're going around insulting people because they insulted us, or burning down their mosque because they burned down our church, we're that's definitely not an example that Jesus wants us to set, because he didn't set that example for us. But you're right, Tony. There's always an escalation. It always starts, from somebody going out and committing a minor crime. They get away with it, and it seems like it gets more and more emboldened. Oh, now we need to do this, and then more people join these movements or whatever. It coalesces into something much larger than the person probably intended it to when they did what they did. And then you got people financing these things.
Yeah.
And then going and actually affirming a lot of things now that should really, in my opinion, have no place being affirmed. I wouldn't expect somebody to affirm my desire, if I had it, to be a mass murderer any more than I think anybody should be affirming somebody's delusion or truth always has to be spoken. Wisdom always has to prevail over logic. What was it? I heard somebody say it the other day, and it made so much sense. Knowledge.
Yeah.
Knowledge always changes, but wisdom is going to be wisdom, whether it's 2,000 years ago today or 2,000 years in the future. So as much as information and knowledge changes, we always know that we have wisdom, and truth and wisdom they go together.
Well, one of the thoughts I had about this, which is troubling, which is that in society today, you've got some echoing. I'll just pick up. In society today, what we're seeing is an ever-increasing movement over a number of years now, where truth is not the same for you and I. Meaning, a lot of individuals out there have their own personal truth, and this is what they use to govern how they look at, how they act, and how they treat other people. This is a Christian country. This is a Christian country. And that level of truth that most people look at as a guiding principle is now changed, because a lot of people, because of secularism and other things, they choose to say, my truth is over here, and I don't respect your truth. I don't even acknowledge your truth. And this is what we've allowed to happen as a country for a bit now. And it's causing problems. It's causing problems because you can't respectfully disagree anymore. And that's a problem.
True. Yeah. Would you like to add to that, Doug?
No, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it, and I just can't help but believe that the mainstream media and what they choose to focus on is part of the culprit. I think they choose to show conservatives as Hitler, and as every chance they get, they're kind of trying to color all conservative talk as racist and hate speech. And the mainstream media just goes along and they just embellish that. And then they give very little platform to conservative voices or Christian voices. And that's why I'm thankful that media now is pretty much more podcasts and online than sitting in front of the boob tube or radio. It's just become a whole another path because people don't trust it any longer. However, there's a lot of mindless people out there that seem to still get their information from these sources that I think can be blamed for a lot of the animosity that is out there right now today, especially against, conservatives and Christians.
It's funny too, because that's what fascist dictatorships always have done, is controlled the information going in and out of the country. They shut down opposing views.
Exactly.
And it seems like that's what the effort that we're seeing to label conservatives or Christians or anybody that will oppose the mantra or the dialogue or the conversation. You just label them and call them whatever you want to call them,
Right.
and it marginalizes them, in society. And it's like, okay, so we can call them these things. We can call them Nazis. We can call them fascists, and it just gains steam. Next thing you know, you got crowds gathering, and the violence erupts. We see it. I just saw it on YouTube the other day. A peaceful, just Christians getting together to worship in a public place, and Antifa shows up.
Yeah.
And violence. What are you even doing there?
Right.
I mean, these people weren't trying to do anything other than to gather to worship. They weren't there for the cameras or to go do anything other than that.
And I see legitimate anger among some young people. I mean, they're really angry. I mean, they really believe what they've been told, and I think, wow, it's crazy, how their minds have been so molded by this rhetoric. And that's why you end up with crazy acts, because they really believe they're doing something good by removing the voices that they believe are the hateful ones. It's an upside down world, right?
Well, what children have been taught since they were little kids to trust their teachers. And when your teachers are the ones telling you these things, you're going to believe it.
Yes.
And they got you for how many years? By the time you're out of high school?
Crazy.
Yeah, you're indoctrinated. That's what Hitler did to the youth, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
True.
You can see how it works.
That's such a good point, Ron, because I remember listening to this older lady who was a child in Germany under Hitler, and she says all her memories were excitement about this new leader that was going to make Germany great again. I mean, it was such a different Hitler than what we know, right? But growing up in it, she thought he was like God sent, like this was going to make them great, their country, because there was lots of poverty in the 30s, of course, following the Depression, right? And
World War One.
World War One. Yeah. I mean, so there was a lot of people suffering in Germany. And so when he came on the scene and made all these promises, they just thought, wow. I mean, it's just amazing that, their mindset was so different than what you and I see today. It kind of reminds me a little bit of when Barack Obama came on the scene and how people just thought, wow, he's going to be the answer to all of our problems, you know? Man, he did more damage in his 8 years than we even still know.
But, and that depends on who you ask whether they're going to see it that way or not, right? What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there definitely is a different view, a very distinct different view for many people in this country. But I think the biggest thing is this is a good bit of advice I've heard somewhere, which is that people should not look to those leaders to be your savior. Because
Right.
truthfully, you know, we as people being, uplifted by good principles, morals, and righteousness allows us to see things and take it, basically take ownership of our own life and the things that we need to do. And that's how we get things to improve. And then as we show Christ like love to those around us, that's how that spreads. It's a powerful process that so many do not want to look at. And it's
Mm.
sad because it locks them into looking to somebody who's going to give them something, whether it's, a political leader or really any other popular person who's showing them something that on the surface feels good. But deep down inside, if you take a minute, you realize that, you know what, that's not the answer. You just have to think deeper. We don't have enough people thinking deep about something
Mm.
and contemplating. Everything is very superficial and it's scary because that takes you in the wrong place almost every time.
Yeah. You give somebody what they want or promise them you're going to, and you give them, anything, even if it's just instant gratification, even just a little, it's dangling that carrot. They're going to want more, and that's what the government's been doing. That's what socialism does. They promise you all this. We'll take care of you. You can kind of go live your lives, and we'll make sure that we'll take good care of you. Um, and it's a lie. It really is. You're just going to be stuck in the same place, and you're going to lose all motivation. And I think a lot of young people are seeing what I think they're trying to implement that in this country, and it's destroying
Yeah.
opportunity for our youth. And I think they're disenchanted. They're desperate. They're confused, uh, and I think we're seeing the results of that. They don't even know where to turn.
And isn't
It's
that where Charlie Kirk made such a big difference? He went into the lion's den. He went into the place that probably most hated him and allowed them to vent, allowed them to share their frustrations and griefs and even their hate. And he wasn't judgmental, but he spoke the truth. Man, I mean, he was solid in the truth. And I'll tell you, that's what made such a profound impact, I think. I mean, and I'm kind of humbled myself when I watch him and I think, man, that dude was bold. I mean, bold to go into the places he went and to go back and to go back again. I'm like, wow. I mean, you got to give him a lot of respect, and I think, yeah, he did what most of us are challenged to do, and that's to speak truth in the face of, that hysterical, crazy, perspectives.
He was fearless in his
Yeah.
faith,
Yeah.
no doubt about it. What a powerful spiritual example. Um, you know, we have talked about and we will talk about Jesus who had gone anywhere, right, to preach his words
Yeah.
and knew that these were dangerous places, but these
Right.
things had to be said. And so
Yes.
it's amazing to me to see, I'm not saying Charlie Kirk's Christ, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
he was really, really good.
Yeah.
And I was just furious when what happened right here in Utah. Man, the craziest thing is it happened in this town we in Utah call Happy Valley. It's the last place that you would expect this, us here in Utah anyway. And I was so furious that it was like Viper came in among the
Yeah.
little sheep, and
Yeah.
did this damage. And it was, Ron, you remember it took me a couple days to really talk about it. I was just so upset that this happened. Oh, it happened here in this place where we, you know, tr- take pride in thinking at a higher level. Didn't matter.
I was numb. Um, I was in shock a little bit. I shouldn't have been surprised. You could see this kind of simmering, but I was in shock. And I remember I talked to you, and I actually mentioned to Doug that we should do a podcast, but I think we had to settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
You never want to go into something when emotions are high, because I've seen some of the videos that people who did when their
Yeah.
feelings and their emotions were raw. And I'm sure some of them would like to take some of the things they said back.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a good thing that we didn't do that, because it's always nice to learn from our people around us sometimes. Um, But no, I think it looks like there's so many youth inspired, and that's a ramification sometimes of evil. Sometimes you inspire good. And I think there's going to be a lot of youth changed. A lot of churches was exploded. I mean, and that's going to be expected after 9/11. Churches exploded. Even after the Passion of the Christ, church attendance exploded for about a month, 6 weeks, whatever it was. I think we'll see a leveling off, and maybe even a little more normalization at some point. But if 500 people, if one person came to Christ because of his death, I mean, there's going to be celebration in heaven, right?
Right.
So, yeah, it was a tragedy, but I don't think it's going to go without it changing on some people, a lot of people.
Absolutely.
One of the things for me, I'm very prayerful that the next powerful voice will come again for the young people, because I couldn't help, one of the main things that came into my mind was, in a group of people, the youth, the young people that are so caught up in the traditional educational system and everything that skews the way they look at things. This was a young man that threw it in such a way that I've never seen before. And I felt like the powers, the negative powers that are out there, just felt like they had to make sure that he couldn't continue. That's the feeling I get from this. I'm not saying that there's some bigger conspiracy here, but it feels like that is what happened. Because his effectiveness to cut through that and help the young people think differently and in a better way. And that's sadly needed. And
Yeah.
he was doing that. So I hope another strong voice steps up and has the same characteristics, can carry that on, because it's needed. It really is.
Oh, he was gaining steam. He was just getting started. He had a mission. I mean, I never read his mission statement, but you could see he was just gaining in popularity. He really hadn't even started.
I read this morning that Bible sales had increased 41% since his death. I mean, that's crazy in
Yeah.
itself.
Praise
Right.
God. Yeah, praise God. Absolutely. Wow. All right. Well, let's see. Where are we going to go next?
Get caught up, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to be tone deaf here and make it look like America is, facing the persecution that we're seeing in all these other nations. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, because they would be tone deaf. I mean, at least especially the violence and the convert or die. We'll talk more about that later.
Right.
So I don't want to get too don't want people to think that, oh, this guy, he thinks we're under persecution. Has he ever read the news? Has he watched the news? And like Doug said, the news is underreporting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get to some of those numbers later, but I want to talk a little bit about Jews and Muslims, being the victims of violence and persecution, because that group is more likely to face persecution, especially the Jews. And I have a few numbers here. It said, Jews and Muslims that are at higher risk of attacks, with Jews at a significantly greater risk of violence and bias, according to U.S. hate crime data and advocacy organizations. So even with the Jewish population being double that of Muslims in America per capita, Jews are facing persecution in much greater numbers. And this trend has intensified since this Hamas, October 7th, Israeli-Hamas conflict, or war, I would call it a war, in 2023. It says Jews were more likely to be victims of religious offenses in 2024 than Muslims by, get this, 660%.
666%.
660%. Oh, no. Well, you could throw in another 6% if you like,
That would help, right?
Yeah. And those are only the incidents that are reported. I mean, so if anybody's going out there talking about Islamophobia or magnifying an attack, an attack here or there on a mosque, and it does happen, and it shouldn't. They have a right to worship as they would like. The Jews, I mean, we can go back to the Old Testament and talk about what the Jews have been going on with the Jews, and we will talk a little bit about that, just for reference purposes. If somebody wants to say, well, the Jews, what about the Jews? Why are you talking about them? I mean, because they seem to be marginalized more than any racial group in the entire planet.
Well, I think that's a powerful thing right there. Those who are curious, the written word, Scripture, when you look at what has been foretold about the way this group of people will be handled, it's a reality. There's no way you can pretend that that's the case. And if you look at the situation, a person who doesn't know much and is outside of this whole thing, they must be thinking, what's up with the Jews? Why do people have a problem? Or, hey, why do I have a problem with it? They feel that way, right? It's something that is just coming from a very bad place and been foretold. And there you go.
But doesn't that make you think this has to be a spiritual warfare? Because it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, even when I was younger, I used to think it's a bizarre thing that there's hatred toward this tiny group of people. It seemed bizarre to me.
They want them extended. That's
yes. And now, and I think in the same vein, Christians, but I think, yes, there's a spiritual warfare for sure. And it doesn't make any sense into our, reason that there is this hatred. But I think that there's also, and this is just my opinion, like when I saw that young trans girl that shot up that Catholic school in Nashville, I think people aren't angry at those kids. They're not angry necessarily even at the teachers. I think they're angry at God, and that anger, and this is just my presumption, people that say they don't believe in God but are angry makes no sense. Why would you be angry if you don't believe that there is a God? And so I think that anger, is just, is misplaced, and they can't shoot God, so they take it out on the closest next thing, and that hostility, I think, comes a lot of times from just this deep-seated anger toward God for whatever reason, right?
Yeah. You don't believe in God and you're angry. That's like being angry with the boogeyman. And when you open up the closet, he's not in there. You tear all your clothes out and go and burn them in the street.
Right.
I mean, not the clothes' fault.
Oh, right.
Right. But the spiritual aspect, absolutely. I mean, in the notes that I wrote, I actually touched on that. And I think because I knew we'd go there eventually. You go back at the Genesis, in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, right? This is where it all started,
Yeah.
right? When he deceived, Eve, and then Adam, and followed in that rebellion, and then they fell into sin. And then God told Satan, Lucifer, the serpent, that because you have done this, I'm going to go ahead and curse you. You're going to crawl on, you're going to eat dust, and you're going to crawl on your stomach for the rest of your remainder of your existence. And he was going to put enmity between her seed and your seed. And what that meant, there was the promise of the Messiah right there, right? Because you would bruise his heel, but he would crush your head. So there's the beginning of the spiritual war right there. Satan knew, I have to do something. I have to make sure that this promised seed, this Messiah, this Redeemer that would be able to redeem mankind, has to be stopped. And I got to do everything I can to stop him or anybody else that leads anybody else to him.
Yeah, it's funny to me because if you step away from the emotion and the feelings of all of this and you just look at it logically, you would say, why is the energy against those people that are Christians so heavy, so strong? It makes no sense unless it comes from somewhere else.
Exactly.
Who are we? We're the image bearers.
There you go.
Of God, who he loves and he hates.
Right. Yeah. That's it. And that's the anger. That's the, murderous spirit that we see, right? I mean, that's that anger coming through that's illogical, it points to that spiritual warfare, I think.
There's nothing logic about hate. The source, it comes from a place to hate somebody in order to kill them. I don't think you can ever justify murder.
But it started way back with Abel. I mean, Cain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, you're
just saying.
Well, it's not just, it's the way it's being done. It's the genocide. It's the removal of people. It's shooting them when they're sitting in church having sex.
Really?
This is not. Who would do that to an animal? Who would do that to any other living thing?
A sociopath.
It's a very darkness that comes over people or something. Scary.
It is scary that those people, we could run into them anywhere at any time.
But as you were saying that, who would shoot people that are in church? I mean, it's illogical. At the same time, we're aborting babies who are harming no one, right? So that whole spirit of murder, we can see transcends just the adults fighting with adults, man, to the point that, it doesn't make any logical sense, and creatures don't normally kill their offspring. I'm just saying.
We protect them. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Right. Yeah. So that hatred, but I think the fact that it's okay in this context or in the context of abortion, which is what the world says that's okay, that just diminishes the value of human life in the big picture. don't you think? I mean, when you're raised believing you're just, you know, useless, people can just be removed. If you're an inconvenience to me, then the whole value of human life has been denigrated.
Yeah. You said value, and I think that's key because what you see is a lack of human value.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, it's scary. Now, whether you're talking about abortion, many people have just justified away of what that is. And I've had this discussion. I remember I was in college 30 years ago, and I had a presentation where I took on that topic, and it was the whole class, that whole college class against me. And they were loud. And I showed pictures and I said, you tell me how this removal of a body is at all just, righteous, definitely not from God, but not even from a person who's thinking another flesh and blood being. How can you do? A lot of people got quiet, but they were very mad at me for that presentation. And I said, all I'm trying to say is think. You don't even need to get to this point, right? There's certain drugs you can take. There's protection. I mean, that's the point where you control things.
Right.
Once there's a heartbeat. Anyway,
Yeah.
without getting into that, but my point is just being that if you become so desensitized,
Yes.
it starts to pervade other areas of your life and society to the point where people are irrelevant if they're in our way. And
Yeah.
it's scary.
And if you ask, because I've seen a lot of debates that Charlie and others have had with the people, that justify the pro-abortionists, and they don't really give you a good argument for justifying it. It's just because I don't want it, or it's going to slow me down. It's going to be an inconvenience to me. It's going to be a burden to me. Life at God meant life and childbearing to be a blessing. It was a command of his to go and reproduce
Right.
the world.
And just so we make this clear, we are not talking about incest, rape, or anything like that. That is a whole deeper discussion.
Yeah.
And there are two viewpoints there too. We're just talking about the run-of-the-mill, very easy to decide have this baby or not. I mean, that's what we're talking about at the moment, and still, a lot of people out there cannot see it.
Yeah, I think the point of bringing it up was just to talk about the divisiveness, but that issue is very divisive. But we're also talking about the spiritual where the spiritual war has led us down.
The desensitization. I think that desensitizing us as a people to death, to murder, to where it's not even meaningful. That's crazy.
There's no there's no value to the human life. I think you brought that up earlier. Yeah. Satan doesn't value life.
Yeah.
Satan, what is he? He said he comes like a roaring lion, seeking to whom he may devour.
Yeah.
He wants to destroy every single one of us in one way or another. That's just one method.
That's it.
Yeah. War, abortion, hate crimes, racism, separating us from God is his main goal.
Yeah.
And if people are fighting about abortion and taking the attention away from having a relationship with our Creator, he's won. And that's the whole thing. He's a liar. He's the father of lies. So Satan, he began this war, on God's plan to redeem man's fall through the Redeemer, the promised Messiah. And there was another thing I wanted to bring up too that I thought that would be a little bit of interesting discussion, and where do you think you guys fall on this, is the fallen angels of Genesis, and they're in a breeding program to destroy the seed of the woman. but it got swallowed up, by the flood. And God put a stop to that attack as well. So Satan's been doing this from the very beginning, and it's just different now. It's just changed now because after the flood, started over. God said, "I'm not going to ever do that again." Because the Messiah is coming. Jesus is going to come, and he's going to redeem mankind. And now it's the choice is clear. The way to him is clear. And Satan has to make that as unclear to us as possible. And he's going to use everything at his disposal to distract him from the only thing that's important, and that's Jesus Christ and a relationship with him, to redeem us back to the Father so we can have an eternal existence, an eternal life, and a wonderful, blessed life. We can have some of that here on earth, but we're going to have tribulation on earth, like Jesus said, but he's going to give us his joy. Not as the world, because the world does give us tribulation. But the promise is that we will be with him for eternity, and Satan wants to destroy that. And he uses everything that he can to persecute, because if he can get somebody to just say, you know what, this isn't worth it. My whole family, they're going to kill my whole family. I'm tired of taking these beatings. I'm tired of my life being on the line. I don't want to be in jail anymore. I renounce Jesus Christ. Okay, I give up. That's the whole plan. That's the whole point, I think. To beat us into submission.
Not much to say there. Yep. Sure.
What do you think, Doug?
Yes. I think yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
No, you're absolutely right. No, I mean, yeah, that's Satan's goal. Kill. He's come to kill, steal, and destroy. And just an aside, I just saw a guy that was 7'6" on a video.
Modern day Nephilim.
I'm like, wow, that was amazing. You just don't see people that tall too often,
No. We have the legends of the giants. We were talking when I brought that up a little bit ago. The Nephilim. There were giants in the world, and they were the Nephilim, right?
Right.
And the sons of Anak. And then after the flood.
That's right.
Some people say, well, did they have like a pituitary gland problem, or were they real giants? Because there is a difference.
But I even have I recently read, I don't know how they would know, that Adam was a giant and that Noah was probably 12 feet tall. And I only recently have read this. I never had heard that before. But, before the flood, the atmosphere was different. Before and again, this is kind of stuff I've read recently, but our whole atmosphere was different. It had never rained upon the earth, and things grew huge, before the flood anyway. That's where we have dinosaurs, right? I mean, before the flood, we had, but the UV rays, the pressure, the oxygenation of our blood, everything would have been different before the flood. And of course, we see that the age length dropped off immensely at Noah, right? It went to 120 years from 900 years or whatever. Yeah. So, and I've also heard it said that lizards never stop growing their entire life. So you can imagine a 900-year-old lizard.
They don't live that long.
Right.
No.
I'm just saying, so there's so much we don't know about pre-flood times, but yeah, the Anakim we do see after.
They said Og's bed was like 13 feet long.
Something like that, yeah.
Og of Bashan, the king of Bashan.
I just read this morning, though, that the area of Bashan, the hill of Bashan, where the Anakim lived, they destroyed that people group before they went into the promised land. That was given to Reuben and Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh. I just happened to read that this morning. That was where I'm reading it in Deuteronomy.
Hey,
And I'm like, wow, it said that they killed all of the sons of Anak, And I'm like,
so
wow,
so
sounds like we're completely decimated.
so who was Goliath and his brothers? I
Yeah,
mean,
because they were called, they were giants. So I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, it seems like there's more than one tribe of people.
And maybe that's it. In fact, you're right, because
yeah,
it went into some detail about what they were called in different areas. But they all ended with Akim or whatever. But there was like the Chanakim and the Anakim and so it had all these different terms depending on
Raphael.
where those giants lived. You're right. Yeah. Anyway, that's just happened to be my reading this morning
Oh,
about the giants.
did you have anything to add to that, Tony?
No, this is a very interesting discussion to me. I think we continue to learn things about that time period and
Oh yeah,
those unique individuals. One thing, and that is prior to the flood, the circumstances are very different.
oh
And so things changed drastically from that point on. And I mean, I don't know. This is one of
yeah,
the things I like to look into because it's
yeah.
very interesting. When we look at scripture and we look at that sort of thing, the purpose of it is to return us back, to prepare us to be with Heavenly Father again. And yet, there's a lot of side stories through history that are interesting. That we'll find it. Have we?
Are you guys getting some like background noise?
I hear a slight echo.
Oh, okay, is that what that is? Okay. No, I would like to. I would love to have a conversation about this. Uh, I would like to have the three of us plus maybe invite Lynn Myers.
All right. Yeah.
I mean, it's right up his alley. Yeah, I still have to reach out to him. You guys had a really good 2-part series on your show. What episodes was that on your show? Do you remember?
Well, I'd have to look it up.
Oh, okay.
It was. I've got a bunch of them now, so I can't remember where but it was probably in the. Yeah, I'm not sure. Could have been
Oh, okay.
75 to 100, somewhere in there. So,
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, no, I was grateful to be a part of that, and I can't wait for the interview with Doug to come out here at some point too. That was a really good interview.
yeah.
But I wanted to kind of shift over here to the countries that are the worst offenders of Christian persecution in the world. Um, and I found a top 20 list, and I kind of just picked through, ones I think we'd be most familiar with. And so these countries, the worst offending countries, usually the Islamic oppression is the most common factor, which is no surprise. I wouldn't expect anybody really to be surprised about that. Just because in the Islamic countries, they're pretty hardliners. You have their factions that are, they just don't mess around. And other factors are dictatorial paranoia, religious nationalism like Hindus and Buddhists, communist oppression, and I didn't see evidence, but they said even organized crime. So I just figured I'd just put that in there. So I want to get to the countries, and we can talk about these if you like. North Korea was number one. They got a 98 out of 100 score for severity of persecution. Extreme communist oppression and dictatorial paranoia is their reason behind this. Christianity is seen as a threat to the regime, and their punishment for the Christians is labor camps or execution.
I have to admit, I'm surprised that there are any Christians in North Korea, to be honest with you. I mean, that's interesting to me because I know how hard that area is in terms of human rights in every possible, like anything like Christian, you're right, is a true threat to the way that country's being ran.
They
Well,
demand toil.
Christianity,
Go ahead.
well,
Go
I
ahead.
was
Doug.
just going to say Christianity is a threat to totalitarianism anywhere, right? I mean, I would think anywhere. Yeah. Because if you're serving God, it's like, just like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? It's like the king will respect you, but final word is God's, you know?
Yeah, they're a threat. Anybody who's not completely loyal to the regime or to the government is a threat. Because if you're loyal to Jesus Christ, your loyalties will be more to him when it comes down to it. If you have to make a choice between Jesus or the regime, you're going to choose Jesus, and they can't tolerate that. Damn. They should call them untotalitarian governments. You know, tolerant governments. I'm sorry. But, so North Korea,
You know, before you move on,
yeah,
there's some commonalities there, right? There's a dependence on the state. And religious or Christians are more self-reliant in most cases. That's a problem. And so
Yeah.
you see how that compares to other places in the world that are pushing for
Mhm.
reliance on the state.
Yeah, good
Right.
point. If we don't need you, you know, and that's what the fear is, right? Well, they're not reliant on us.
Yeah.
And how many people starve in that country? Why? I mean, I'm surprised they haven't had a revolt. I mean, I'm sure they have the ability to crush whatever revolt there is, just because most of their people are
Yeah.
starving.
Yeah,
All
if you
right.
do that long enough, to a society, they get that syndrome, you know, like a person who gets
Mm,
abducted. Oh, I love you in a weird way. That's kind of what it is. So
what's
I
that
see
called?
I don't know what it's called now off the top of my head, but you know, that does exist. And so I
Yes.
think if you suppress a population long enough, they vote you in again and again, and we see
Yeah.
that. So,
It's when you fall in love. It's when you fall in love or with your captor,
Right.
right? Oh, I forget the name of it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so number 2 had a 94 out of 100 was Somalia, another non-shocker, right? And
Yeah.
and this is Islamic oppression from groups like Al-Shabaab. Converts to Christianity face being killed by family or community. That's biblical,
mhm.
right?
That's where
Other,
Elon Omar is from, right?
yes, yes.
And her allegiance, she made it clear, was
Mm,
to Somalia, not to the U.S.
absolutely. And how she's still sitting, you know, is she a senator?
And Congress
Eh,
representative.
oh, yeah. How she still has a seat anywhere is beyond me. Because when you take that oath, your oath, against
That's
all enemies,
exactly
foreign
right.
and domestic, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow.
Yes. Somebody recently suggested that, I think it was Billy Graham, or not Billy Graham, but what's his son's name?
Franklin?
Franklin Graham, that said that, since the president is required to be, born in this country, he believes all of Congress, all of our representatives should also be required. That same requirement should be transferred onto them. And I think I tend to agree with that now. In the beginning of our country, maybe that wasn't as practical, but it absolutely is practical today, with the millions we have to choose from.
Do you know? I wonder. Are there any other countries that allow foreigners to come in and gain citizenship and then
Yeah.
run for public office? Oh, well, no, I think that in Europe, right? I mean, you're seeing that in Europe. So
I
not
don't know.
yeah, like I think in the UK, you've seen some elections won by immigrants, from the when the wars in during in Afghanistan, Turkey, whatever those wars were 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever. They had a flood of people coming in for asylum reasons because of the violence,
Mhm.
and so you've seen them win elections, and you see where the loyalties are changing, the demographics are changing.
I was going to say, it doesn't even really have to go that far. Just show some allegiance to the new homeland.
Well, yeah,
At least
Yes.
try to show you support the
Yes.
Declaration of Independence. Look, if you can't do that, you have no business.
No.
And that's the problem. The people that are showing that they are fighting all that we know to be the way this country should be run,
Mm,
they're not hiding it. So
no.
let's
Yeah.
start there.
And they're not being made to either, right? They're not even. It's like
Well,
they're
they have to
excuse.
take the oath,
Yeah.
but
Okay. For not to get. I didn't. This wasn't supposed to be too political, but we do have a guy named Domney, or how do you pronounce that in
yeah,
New York?
Mamdani. Yeah.
Mamdani,
Yeah, he's pretty. Yeah, he's saying all the right things, but he's also said all the wrong things, and we got it on tape. And it's the same story there. But I think just like God gave the Israelites over, to an idolatrous nation in the Old Testament, and their country was conquered and they were dispersed. America seems to be kind of following that trend. Or
Well, New York and California for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, but the big, the big states, the one with the New York, California, well, then you got Minnesota. Minnesota, I mean, I don't know what to make of Minnesota. Can we go ahead and annex them over to Canada? Is that possible? Maybe
Well,
Michigan?
Texas, it's a pretty big state, and it seems to still be at least 55, 60% on
Yeah, by the way, I'm just
conservative.
kidding. I'm just kidding to anybody that lives in Minnesota that happens to see this, or any of the other states. Yeah. So anyway, then we got Yemen, 3, Islamic oppression. Libya, 91 out of 100 Islamic oppression. Sudan, 90 Islamic oppression. Nigeria, which is, I mean, Nigeria. If the news would just report on a third of what's happening to the Nigerian Christians, it would make, I think we wouldn't be talking too much about Gaza right now. Because they didn't start a war. They're just trying to survive.
Yeah, it's terrible.
You there, Doug?
I am.
Okay, there you are. Okay. Did you have anything to say on that? Or do you want to keep going? Well, okay. Well, Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, enough said, as far as the reasons for their oppression. Then we got India. That goes under the label of religious nationalism. Then we got Saudi Arabia. No public Christian worship allowed. So this is kind of China, of course, communist. That's just a few. And there's more. And one thing I got to point out, though, out of all that list, America is not on there. So I just wanted to kind of, yeah, not yet. But I just wanted to my pastor, one of my pastors talked to me a little bit about this. I reached out to him, and he said, Ron, not to, so you don't come off as tone deaf. I want, and maybe look into what's going on around the world. And so I did, and he's absolutely right. At least for now. I think, like Doug said, when we talked this morning, and he alluded to it a little bit earlier today, in America, it's truth that's under attack, and Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so he's the embodiment and the originator of truth. And so that's why I think people get so triggered, even by the mention of Jesus, the organization of a Christian organization or institution. It offends people on a level that they don't understand. It's because it's spiritual. It is. It's unseen. The unseen war that's fought every single moment of every single day.
Yeah, with these countries that you mentioned, I'm really not surprised about any of those,
No.
because we know kind of what's going on there. Maybe India, um, but even still, it borders Pakistan. I see why some of that may happen. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, this country should never be anywhere near this list because it is a Christian nation. And so, um, when we start to see weird things happening, it should be a point where the country takes a look at themselves. We have to look back at what we're doing. These things don't happen overnight. They're a slight and slow degradation over time. And what have we allowed to just fester here in our society that promotes these things? More people need to care about this. Now, it's true, not to go down this for too long, but, we have talked earlier today about how Christians very much turn to the other cheek in what we do, right? We accept a lot of this stuff. I think one of the things I've noticed with Christians all over is the difficulty in determining and understanding what being Christ-like and what being passive. Being passive is not being Christ-like. It's very different. I think people feel like they have to be passive to feel like they're doing what Christ would do. And Christ stood for everything and about what he did. All right. He knew how to do it. He did it in a way with a love. And this is really what people need to look at. Stand up for what we believe, but do it with love. Like Charlie Kirk did without going back there, but I felt like he did. Give people an opportunity to talk and lovingly correct. And
Yeah.
we have an opportunity here in society to try to slow this down. I don't know. If we're not careful, Sunday football and Saturdays at the beach, and takes up a lot of our mental focus, and we just forget all about what we need to do as a society to protect our society. Anyway, just wanted to say that because this is what I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the Christians need to know their role, to share the gospel, to baptize the nations in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We are to make disciples. We're not to stand quietly and not preach. And I hear a lot of people say that, oh, you're not supposed to talk about politics and religion in mixed company. And, I mean, sometimes, there are times where it's like, it doesn't call for that, right? But every time we see an opportunity, we have to be ready. The Bible says always be in season. We have to always be ready to give a defense for the hope that is within us, right?
Right.
So, and give them a reason for this faith that we have. And we have to do it with boldness, but also, with humility and even fear, because we want to get it right when we have that opportunity. It's not a fear of being afraid to do it. It's like the fear of the Lord, right? It's a reverential awe that what we've been given, this eternal life and this being saved from this life that we had before, and we are a new creation, and we want that for everybody else. So if somebody comes to you and they're lost, you want them to be found, and you don't want to mess it up. There comes that's where I think that when it says meekness and humility and fear, it's the same kind of fear. It's a reverential awe for the message that we have, that we've been given, that changed us.
Good words.
Nothing to add, Doug? Okay.
Ron, stop saying stuff so good.
I'm just rambling. I thought I was
Doing good.
I was making it up as I went along, I
Doing
just
good.
so anyway, okay. Um, so what talk about going about persecution. The Bible says that we are blessed when we are persecuted for righteousness sake. Right? So not that we seek it out, but when it happens, we're not to pity ourselves or feel sorry for ourselves, or I think it's, even if it costs us everything, we are blessed. And you've seen that in Charlie Kirk's wife, right? After his murder, she didn't attack. She knew this was God, that God had a calling on his life. She knew that this could be a price that would be paid, and God was glorified in it. And that's the whole point of persecution, Christian persecution especially, is that we are suffering just as our Savior suffered, because he was persecuted. So when we are persecuted for his name's sake, we are blessed, regardless of what we're facing in that moment. And like I said, I don't want somebody to pull a gun and put it between my eyes, and tell me renounce Jesus, because I'm going to say I can't do that. I don't want to be shot in the middle of the eyes, in between the eyes. I don't want to be beaten and have my flesh peeled off or something or whatever. The worst possible thing. Right? But I can't possibly fathom a situation where I would deny Jesus. I just can't picture it. Maybe when I was 20, but not at this stage of my life.
Not to take away from that, because that's true and that's powerful. One of the interesting things I've heard before is, it's one thing to die for Christ. It's another thing to live for him
Hmm.
every moment of your life for the rest of your life. To make a decision like that, it's very hard, very scary. To rise up in boldness for one moment versus doing it continually for the rest of our life. We need both of those, right? That's the crazy. Think of Charlie Kirk's wife, the conviction, the level of conviction that she has, and the foundation of spiritual strength and testimony really allows her to handle something that would make most people crumble. And that really says a lot about her. At least this is what we see anyway. And that's what we all are hoping for. We don't want any of that to happen. But can we be strong enough to see with perspective beyond this moment into the eternities of what power and purpose is of what we do? It allows us to turn around and accept the conditions of our life with positiveness, faith, and love, like she's doing, like many other have done. That's powerful. And that's what I keep praying someday I'm big enough and strong enough to do.
Well,
Because
it's
that's
testimony.
where it's at. That's where it's at.
What did Paul say about that, Doug? About to live is gain, or what was it? Or to live is Christ, but to die is gain.
We've lost you, Doug.
I think we lost you temporarily, Doug. Still can't hear you.
We can see you, but
we can see you. A big old smile. Obviously, he can hear us. Let me see. Yep, now he's frozen. Look at that. There's a portrait right there. I'm going to frame that and put it on my dresser. Look at
I
that.
have to do some editing here.
No, you're right.
He's moving again. Let's see.
Yeah. Can we hear you yet, Doug? Nope. Not yet. Well, he still can't hear Doug. You're right though. I'm sure Doug was probably trying to say that exactly. I'm going to speak for Doug right now. Hey, Doug. Yeah, Doug was like, whoa, exactly. I was going to agree with everything you just said there, fella.
Hey,
No, you're
Ron,
right.
let me say this real quick. If we can get him back, we probably can all log off and log back in. You'll have 2 recordings.
Uh-huh.
That might reset some things. So hopefully he comes back. Anyway,
Can he log out and log back in?
I wouldn't do that
Wouldn't
because
do that? Okay.
that's where I've seen problems where one person's video gets lost.
Okay.
So
Try it again, Doug.
it's better for us all to log off and log back on if we go that route.
Okay. Yeah, you want to try to do that, Doug? You want to?
Can you hear us, Doug?
Yeah, he can hear us. Okay.
Ron's suggesting we both are suggesting we log off and come back on. Is
Yeah.
that good?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So let me stop.
Bye.